let's talk about North Carolina Courage versus Orlando Pride, the first game for the Courage since the Challenge Cup championship. This one taking place on Wednesday, May 18th, going to be kicking off at 7 p.m. Eastern. Just a little bit of, just catching folks up in case they might have missed some things. North Carolina has not played again since their Challenge Cup victory because their recent match against New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC was recently postponed due to a number of players on both teams under COVID protocol. If you might have missed our previous episodes about the postponement of this game, there was a little bit of back and forth. The league went ahead and introduced a brand new policy called a COVID replacement player policy. It follows similar protocols with the national team replacement policy, meaning teams in the event of losing players due to international duty, during international windows, or in the instance of too many players being out under COVID protocol, you can sign a temporary player to help sort of flesh out your roster for a game day. This current policy is only going to be in effect for the next 60 days, however, and it will eventually be reevaluated by the league and the NWSL Players Association to just sort of see if this is something they need to keep moving forward. But between the two sides, about 11 players out under COVID protocol. So that game was postponed. So we have not gotten to see North Carolina Courage in regular season action since their week 1 loss to Angel City. So now they're going to go ahead and return to action. They're going to welcome Orlando Pride. Lisa, when we're looking at these two teams going head to head, who are you picking and why?
This is a tough one because we talked a little bit off mic before this started about these teams, about Orlando Pride in particular, because as you looked at the landscape of the season, it was like Orlando's going to struggle a little bit throughout this year. They lost some big time players. There have a lot of new faces, including head coach Amanda Cromwell into the league coming from the collegiate game. And Orlando is going to struggle. They're going to have their ups and downs throughout the season. However, they're going to be a team that surprises a lot of folks. They just beat Angel City FC, which was a great win. Sydney Leroux getting an early goal in that match over Angel City. And then when you look at North Carolina, they're coming off of a bye week technically with that COVID postponement, but they've had people and players on COVID protocol. So they haven't been able to train. They haven't been able to practice. I doubt they've been around the team. Luckily, you can do Zooms and join in team events that way and film sessions that way. But coming off of a Challenge Cup win and then going into a postponement with a lot of players on COVID protocol, that's not always great. We don't know the availability report as of this recording Tuesday afternoon for Wednesday evening matches for North Carolina. If those COVID players under COVID protocol are out of protocol, if they're available, if only some of them are, if not. So that's all things that need to be taken into consideration. However, in this match, North Carolina versus Orlando, depending on the players available, depending on who's not, I'm going to go with North Carolina getting the win in this one. I think they just have a little bit more grit to them and going against a team like Orlando Pride that's coming off of a big win. But in the history between these two sides, last 14 matches between Orlando and North Carolina, Orlando has won 1 against the Courage in those 14 matches. So historically, this is a tough matchup for Orlando to face. And I don't think this midweek action is going to be any different because Orlando, they also played last weekend. So coming off of a really quick turnaround, heading into these midweek games, it's going to be a theme. And we're seeing a lot of younger players from North Carolina step up. Emily Gray, she got an assist in her regular season debut for the Courage, and just really a lot of promise from the young for North Carolina.
It's a tentative pick for North Carolina is what I'm hearing from you.
I'm definitely a little bit tentative about this, but I'm gonna stick with North Carolina for now.
I hear you. I don't blame you. Like if we go back and we even just look at that availability report that came out just on May 13th for the game that was ultimately postponed against Gotham. I can't even go through all of them, so I'll just pick out maybe some key players that kind of stand out to me right away. Just on the North Carolina Courage side, we had Katie Bowen, who was out under COVID protocol, Abby Ersick out under COVID protocol, Emily Gray, left knee issue there, who was listed as out. Carson Pickett, COVID protocol. Brianna Pinto, COVID protocol. Caitlin Rowland, who has been their starting goalkeeper, COVID protocols. And Casey Murphy was bumped up temporarily, I think, to questionable with the right knee, but ultimately they did not play this game against Gotham. So those are some of those players, depending on the day of the week, right? Let's say a midweek match could be a starter for this North Carolina Courage side. So I think when we're looking at also the fact that they're going to have somebody like Caroline, who is out for a little while with the sprain that she went ahead and confirmed on her own social media. She said, "Hey, I'm going to be out for a little while." I'm wondering what this North Carolina Courage side is going to look like against Orlando Pride. Again, as of this recording, we don't have the availability report as just yet, and we also haven't seen, if that COVID player replacement policy is going to be in effect just yet. We haven't seen the announcement of any players added to the roster, under this new policy in place. So I'm a little curious as, if certain players are already past, the appropriate allotted amount of time.
5 days.
We'll see. It's cutting it close. I'm also looking particularly at that goalkeeper position,
right?
Because we just hadn't seen. We know what Casey Murphy is capable of because of prior performances in the past for both club and country, but we have not seen her play for North Carolina Courage in 2022 quite yet. She's been dealing with a little bit of a knock and trying to go ahead and take care of that. So I'm who's going to be starting in net.
They have Marissa Bova, who is a college draft pick for North Carolina, but she's yet to see time. And I don't know, the fact that Casey Murphy was bumped up from out to questionable for last week's game, dependent upon that, is because there's only 3 goalkeepers rostered. And if you have one starting in the game, you have to have at least one on the bench in case anything happens. But that's not good for Casey Murphy's recovery. If she's scrambling a little bit and saying, okay, I need to step up and play this game for my team because they don't have a goalkeeper. So the goalkeeper is the biggest question mark, because there are other field players that can slot into a lot of these different roles. I mean, it's very hard to replace Abby Ersick as a center back for the Courage, but there are other defenders that can do it. There are defensive middies that can slot into that role as well. You can change your formation a little bit, but goalkeeper, no one can just slot into that role.
Yeah. I mean, well, even without potentially some of these players, I know we're keeping a focus on the goalkeeper position right now, but looking at players who could potentially be available for this game, somebody like a Davinia, somebody like a Denise O'Sullivan, 2 players who are massive in the middle for this North Carolina side. Taylor Smith wasn't on that previous availability report. I'm wondering if she's gonna, be available for this match against Orlando, and if so, I think she's gonna be a bit of a menace for that back line and the Orlando Pride side. So I'm a little bit torn in this one, Lisa. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of unknowns for me with North Carolina. And when I'm looking at the other side of the ball at Orlando Pride, we got to show them some love here now in the segment. They're coming off of a very interesting game where they did end up squeezing out a result, 2-2 draw against Kansas City. They're looking like they're trying some things and trying to figure some things out here in these early part of the regular season, as 11 other teams are trying to iron things out and figure things out early in the season as well. This is a good time to maybe try to steal some points perhaps from other teams who are still trying to go ahead and cross the T's and dot the I's. So when I'm looking at this Orlando Pride team and seeing how they are undefeated in their last 2 matches, they are perhaps a little bit more in form. We're looking at a North Carolina Courage team that has not played in a little while in the regular season. And not only we're coming off of a little bit of a grinder in the portion of the schedule, but now I've had a number of players that have had to deal with COVID protocol. So I'm not sure what their form is going to be in this match after so many different obstacles to get back into playing into the regular season. So I'm going a little bit back and forth in this one as I look at Orlando Pride and say, hey, they've had Erin McLeod back for a number of weeks now. She's been looking really good in net, is a keeper who likes to face a lot of shots and is capable of that. I think she's faced like something like 46 crosses already in just 3 appearances here in the regular season. And then they've also welcomed the return of Sydney Leroux, who has been a huge bump for this team. So I'm torn in this one, and I'm a little curious as if this one is maybe going to be a draw. And I think that's where I'm leaning between these two for me.
I see that. I totally see a draw in this one based on everything that we've just talked about. It really depends on player availability and which players for North Carolina have been back, and of course the health of Orlando Pride players, because they need to stay in top shape as well.